I'm a lawyer, and I do not think AI is going to replace us completely. For more context, I'm in my second year. I'm still fresh, especially by standards of the law compared to the average amount of time people have been practicing. You can do it for a long, long time. I also specifically practice in the area of business and real estate transactions, so never really in a courtroom, just constantly living in Microsoft Word, drafting contracts, Outlook, emails, client calls, things of that nature. So this is this is my biased perspective coming from that arena. And it all centers around this idea of businesses hiring lawyers as a means to mitigate risk. Now, that's definitely not a novel concept or, something I need to explain to people, but I would invite you to think of it a tad bit differently in more of a blame game sort of way. Because obviously, businesses hire us. I work for a larger firm, so the business will engage our firm to advise on matters of law in the areas that we're competent in. And by doing that, that can mitigate risk for the business, whether it's trying to avoid a certain loophole or trying to speed things up because we've seen it before, done different filings, dealt with different municipalities, things of that nature. But it's also a way of putting the blame on another person for doing this amount of work. If you think of it from like a broader context of why do you hire someone to do something, it's so they'll take responsibility of it, and if shit hits the fan, for lack of better words, it'll be their fault. Now, in terms of recourse of what people have, obviously they could sue their lawyer for malpractice. Those succeed or don't with varying degrees of success, and malpractice is a whole different area that I'm not qualified to talk about and hopefully never have to deal with. But just beyond that, this concept of shifting blame and shifting risk to another party that's involved in your transaction is something that I think is going to forever stay with lawyers for a couple of different reasons. The first being that no AI or AI company is going to, if they could, sign their name and voluntarily take liability for an opinion they give, especially a legal opinion, and maybe possibly any opinion. Now, that's not to say, and we're already seeing this, that there's medical firms, law firms, businesses, construction firms, just anything that builds something or gives advice. Obviously, they're using AI to enable their respective trade or business, but they're not just letting AI give out an opinion. That's all kind of lay people using it to help them, and obviously there's the hallucination problem, and someone going to ChatGPT for medical or legal advice or even construction advice or any advice. I mean, how is that so different from what people have been doing with Google and search engines since the 1990s? And at the end of the day, there's no cause of action. Google's okay with putting the information out there, but they're not signing their name on the dotted line saying we're responsible for this information. It's a whole different ballgame. I think AI is the same way. It's very enabling and helpful and can make things efficient, but at the end of the day, especially in the legal context and professional advice giving context, anything where you need a license, no AI company is going to sign on the dotted line and say, hey, we're responsible for this. Maybe that will change as the hallucinations stop and AI companies are okay with taking that risk. Maybe there will be insurance. Maybe there already is insurance for, relying on AI decisions, and that the AI companies could go to if it's wrong. But I don't think we're quite there yet. And to loop this around for legal advice, why it's especially not the case that AI is going to replace us maybe ever is the fact that AI really can't sign a pleading in a court of law. They can't sign a legal opinion because it would be unauthorized practice of law. And obviously AI is not, it can't do that. The AI companies, they legally cannot advise on that. Like I said, there's Legora, Harvey, other legal specific AI tools that help a lawyer, but at the end of the day, AI is not putting pen to paper, giving their professional opinion. And I think that is what, in the business, transactional business law world context, that is what obviously clients want our expertise and a friend to talk to on the call. That's a joke. They totally do not want to be talking to us longer than necessary because we're billing by the hour. But I think a big part of a lawyer's value is taking that blame and responsibility for the opinions they give and the advice they give, the help they give throughout the transaction, at least in my world. There's other practices where you're just like shifting liability. Obviously, insurance is probably the textbook definition of what I just said, and in that way lawyers kind of are an insurance policy. I don't think AI can ever replace that, and even if it theoretically could, the hallucinations stop, which I think one day will be the case. No bar association filled with humans, and probably humans a lot older than me, maybe that'll change with my generation and younger, they're likely not going to allow AI or an AI company to hold a bar license. That means the AI can't give legal advice, so it won't even be an option for people to take. This is not to say that it's preventing people from using it for research and then representing themselves in court. Obviously, people can be a pro se litigant if they want, but this whole idea that it's going to completely replace lawyers, the lowest hanging fruit argument, it's because lawyers are, at least in Florida, and I think in most, if not all jurisdictions, it's a self-governing profession. So the state bar is a branch of the judiciary of the state government, and it sets the rules for how lawyers are disciplined, how you get admitted to practice, continuing learning, education requirements, all that stuff. It's not set by the actual state legislature. So it's kind of this, once you're in the club, it's really hard to get kicked out, obviously, unless you do something worthy of getting kicked out, and there's a big long rule book if you want to, learn how to do that. But just for that fact alone, people being very hesitant to trust new technologies, especially in law, it's funny that that's the first one that people think would be replaced. And honestly, it makes total sense. I look at my job, and especially when drafting contracts, I mean, sometimes it is just kind of word mixing and matching, and I think that's a lot of what we're seeing with the AI programs that help lawyers. That's what it's useful for. It's gonna make us more efficient in the long run. But in terms of full replacement, I don't know that that's going to happen in the near future or ever.